With the UFC and Bellator MMA being the two biggest organizations in the world, there are some great crossover super fights that will be very interesting to see, where we can all see once and for all which promotion has the better fighters. So for this video, I will be discussing 10 UFC vs Bellator super fights. Number 10. A matchup between former UFC lightweight champion Rafael dos Anjos versus the former Bellator welterweight champion Douglas Lima would be an exciting fight to see. Rafael dos Anjos is known for his high volume striking and is overall a well-rounded fighter. His fighting style is mainly Muay Thai, and he also possesses an excellent ground game. Douglas Lima has the most devastating striking skills in MMA, where he puts full power into every strike. He almost crippled Rory MacDonald in his last fight with his vicious leg kicks and absolutely pushed him to the limit. Both Rafael dos Anjos and Douglas Lima are well-rounded and would put an excellent show for the fans if they ever faced each other in the future. Number 9. A matchup between top lightweight contender Habiba Magomedov versus the former Bellator lightweight champion Michael Chandler would be a very intriguing fight to see. Habiba Magomedov has mauled just about everyone he has faced with his high-level sambo skills, where he is on the brink of becoming the champion. Michael Chandler is one of the best lightweights on the planet, who has dominated two former UFC champions in Eddie Alvarez and Benson Henderson in impressive fashion. Both lightweights are very elite in their skills. It will be interesting to see if Habiba Magomedov will be able to implement his grappling skills on a very good wrestler in Michael Chandler. Both fighters match up very well against each other, where it will be interesting to see who comes out on top. Number 8. A matchup between top heavyweight contenders in Mark Hunt versus the legend Fedor Emelianenko would be a very interesting rematch to see. Both fighters faced off in Pride 2006, where Fedor was able to get the win by submission via Kimura lock in the first round. Since that time, Mark Hunt has improved leaps and bounds, whereas Fedor Emelianenko has slowed down a lot. We have seen Mark Hunt use his crazy Samoan power to flatten some of the best heavyweights in the world, whereas Fedor Emelianenko has struggled in recent years against mid-tier heavyweights. This rematch would be very different from the first fight, where it will be interesting to see who comes out on top. Number 7. A matchup between top welterweight contenders in Darren Till versus Michael Page would be an exciting fight to see. Darren Till is massive on the welterweight division and last brought down fan favourite fighter Donald Cerrone in a one-sided beatdown. Michael Page is an excellent welterweight prospect who likes to frustrate his opponents by showboating in his fights, where he always finds the right opportunity to strike. Both fighters like to utilise movement into their fighting styles, where they rely on timing to land accurate shots. Both fighters are high-level accurate strikers who always try to take their opponents out very quickly. Number 6. A matchup between current UFC featherweight champion Max Holloway versus current Bellator champion Patricio Pitbull would be an epic super fight to see. Max Holloway has worked his way up from the bottom to the top and has just about cleared out the division, where he's just on a different level right now. Patricio Pitbull is a well-rounded fighter who has also cleared out the Bellator featherweight division with both his high-level striking and his submission skills. Both fighters always come to brawl and will definitely be a fun fight to see. Number 5. A matchup between current UFC bantamweight champion TJ Dillashaw and the current Bellator bantamweight champion Darren would be a crazy super fight to see. TJ Dillashaw blends Muay Thai and his high-level wrestling skills into a recipe of success, which has helped him put together dominant performances against the best bantamweights in the world. Darren is very big for the bantamweight division, where he stands 5 feet 10 inches tall and is always the bigger man going into his fights. He has the fighting style that could provide a good challenge to TJ Dillashaw. Both fighters match up very well against each other, where it will be interesting to see who comes out on top. Number 4. A matchup between current UFC Women's Featherweight Champion Cris Cyborg versus the current Bellator Women's Featherweight Champion Julia Budd would be an amazing super fight to witness. Cris Cyborg has been one of the most dominant females on the planet, where she has violently mauled all of her competition with her vicious striking skills. Julia Budd has been one of the best female fighters outside of the UFC, who possesses great striking skills and matches up great with Cris Cyborg. Julia Budd has a great background in professional kickboxing and has transitioned these skills very well into mixed martial arts. Both ladies are roughly the same size and will definitely put on a great show for the fans. Number 3. A matchup between current UFC middleweight champion Robert Whittaker versus the current Bellator middleweight champion Rafael Carvalho would be an exciting super fight to see. Robert Whittaker possesses serious power in each limb and has conquered some of the biggest names in the UFC. He has stomped through the toughest fighters in the middleweight division, where he has eventually become the champion. Rafael Carvalho is a dangerous Muay Thai striker who has finished 12 of his 15 wins by TKO or by knockout. He is very violent on the feet, where he is always pushing for the finish. Both fighters possess the finishing ability. It will be interesting to see who comes out on top. Number 2. A matchup between current UFC light heavyweight champion Daniel Cormier versus the current Bellator light heavyweight champion Ryan Bader would be a great fight to see. Daniel Cormier has defeated some of the biggest names in the sport impressively. Whilst in the UFC, Ryan Bader had defeated some big name light heavyweights and had always been so close to a UFC title shot, but never quite got there. Both Daniel Cormier and Ryan Bader got into an altercation at UFC 187 where it created some buzz for a fight to happen, but Ryan Bader would leave the UFC for Bellator and became the champion in the promotion. Now with both fighters as reigning light heavyweight champions, this fight would be a massive super fight where it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top. Number 1. A matchup between current UFC welterweight champion Tyron Woodley versus the current Bellator welterweight champion Rory MacDonald would be a very intriguing rematch to see. Both fighters faced each other at UFC 174 where Rory MacDonald won the fight by unanimous decision. Both fighters have evolved so much since their last fought. Tyron Woodley is known for his one-punch knockout power, but in his recent fights he has become more of a patient fighter, whereas Rory MacDonald applies all of his tools in his recent fights and just looks on a different level. Both fighters have a serious history with each other where it will be interesting to see who comes out on top in this super fight.